Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and welcome to my weekly Stonemaier Games livecast here on Facebook. Today is not an e-newsletter day. I'll be doing that next week. February is kind of a weird month for that. But yeah, I'm here to talk about some Stonemaier Games news, mostly discuss some random topics, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Let's start off with the chocolate of the day. I love Lake Champlain chocolates, and they always do a little sale after certain holidays, like after Valentine's Day. And so I got a box of their truffles. These I think are the best truffles that I've ever had, just period. They're huge, they're delicious. I love the dark chocolate ones and the coffee ones in particular. So I can't wait to break this guy open and have some of these truffles inside this box. So that's my chocolate of the day. What's your chocolate of the day or your treat of the day? Let's see. Oh, Biddy's birthday. I'll just talk about some fun stuff at first while people show up. Biddy, my older cat, he had his 13th birthday a couple days ago. And actually today is my parents' wedding anniversary. I just got a reminder about that on my calendar. They were married in 2007. That was their 30th anniversary. That can't be right. Is that right? Wow, they've been married a long time. So yeah, I gotta wish them a happy wedding anniversary today. Have they really been married for 43 years? Yeah, that's right. They've been married for 43 years. Well, happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. I will send you a little note later today to congratulate you on 43 years of marriage. That's incredible. What else is going on today? Some videos I did recently were one was At the Gates of Loyang. So one of my favorite game mechanism videos was about At the Gates of Loyang, which I played a couple weeks ago, I think. Did a video about the victory point track in it. I also played Master Labyrinth. Labyrinth is a game from my childhood that somehow still holds up today. Master Labyrinth was, I think, a more advanced but also better version of Labyrinth, and I got to play that this past week too, and really enjoyed that. So I did videos about those two games. It looks like some people are commenting on the comments. Josh said he's playing Smash Up, Imhotep the Duel, and Kare Kare. How is Imhotep the Duel? I love Imhotep, but I haven't played the Duel version, so I'm curious how that one is. Chad says, don't you love calendar reminders? Saving relationships since 1999. Yeah, I do. I rely heavily on calendar reminders. I don't know what I would do without them. Like I have reminders for the most mundane things that I just can't remember or don't want to remember. I just let my calendar remind me. The only thing that throws me off is that every now and then I use Outlook, and every now and then Outlook decides not to send me that day's reminders, and I don't realize it's happening until it's sometimes too late, and so I have to like close down Outlook. But so it's one of the dangers of relying too heavily on reminders. But for the most part, it works out. Rudy says their treat of the day every day is coffee. Rudy also says, what are my thoughts on folks tweaking the rules or setting up house rules for my games? Do you feel like it hurts the game or does it add to the enjoyment? My general thought on house rules is that if there's something that you need to do in your group to increase your enjoyment and your fun for a game, I'm completely fine with you doing that. That's the point of why I make games. I want to make people happy and have those joyous, memorable moments at the tabletop. So if that's what you need, I'm all for them. I think the one thing that I recommend, this actually came up in the Wingspan group today. Someone asked about like why something is the way it is in Wingspan, and they said, why isn't it this way? And they were pretty much saying, I wish it was this way. I wish it were this way. And I responded to them to explain why it was the way it was. And I recommend to them, and I recommend to anyone who has a house rule idea, before like posting about it, just try it. Because you might see right away why it isn't in the game if you actually have tried it and experienced it. Or you might really like it, and then you can post and say, hey, I tried this house rule, and this is how things turned out. This is how it was a little different. This is what I liked. This is what I disliked about it. Then you're speaking from experience. I find that to be much more helpful when people post about house rules online. It looks like Jakub Rozalski, the artist for the 1920 Plus World and Our Game Scythe, artist and world builder, and a lot more than just the artist, has joined us today in the comments. So Jakub, thanks for dropping by. Carol says, if I can only go to one day of Geekway to the West, is there a day you would recommend or one you would definitely not pick? It depends on what you're looking to get out of the convention. Thursday, I would say not Thursday, actually, because in the morning, there's usually a long line to pick up to get like signed in. And if you come at the right time, you can avoid it. But if you want to have like a full day, Thursday probably won't work for that purpose. I would say Friday or Saturday. Those are like full days. There will be a lot of people there, but the Geekway has plenty of space for everybody. So I would say Friday or Saturday. It's too bad that you can only come for one day though, Carol. That's too bad. Looks like several like famous people in the industry are joining us. James Hudson is here. James is currently running his Kickstarter campaign for Wonderland's War. And Kai Stark, the designer of Side the Wind Gambit, has joined us as well here. And Connor, actually, lots of big names today. Connor of Inside Up Games. He has the game Summit that I often talk about that I really love. Connor's here, and Cynthia of MeepleSource is also here. So if you have any questions for these people, you might post them in the comments as well. James has a question. James says, what classic game do I still regularly play? This isn't quite my answer, but I just mentioned Master Labyrinth, and so that's kind of a classic game that I wouldn't say I regularly play, but I do enjoy it. Or Labyrinth, any version of Labyrinth. But classic games that I still regularly play, I would say Scotland Yard is probably at the top of that list. That's one of the older games. Although Magic the Gathering is really almost as old as Scotland Yard at this point, I think. And I don't play on a regular basis, but whenever a new set comes out, I host a draft for it. So I would say that Magic could be considered a classic game at this point. But Scotland Yard is probably the game that looks like the classic game. I'm looking over here at my shelf to see. And yeah, I would say Scotland Yard would be my pick for that. What about you, James? What's your pick for a classic game that you still enjoy with you and your family and your friends? Ryan says, any updates on the My Little Scythe expansion today? Yeah, I just posted about this, Ryan, in the My Little Scythe group, actually I think just yesterday or the day before. So what's going on with the expansion is we printed it, we made it, and before the Chinese New Year, and we shipped it out of China on the way to various fulfillment centers around the world. And then I realized that I left a few important components out of the expansion. Totally my fault. Just one of those things when you make an expansion, there are basically some player tokens that are missing from it. And so we had to go back and make them. But then China has been shut down for quite some time now due to the Chinese New Year and the coronavirus. So they haven't been able to actually make those components yet. So fairly soon they will make those components when our factory in China reopens. They will make those components and they will air freight those components to the various fulfillment centers that have the expansion. And once I know the timeline for that, I will start talking a lot more about the expansion. But until then, like the factory is pretty much closed, so I don't even know how long it's going to take to make this little component pack that we need to add to the expansion. So hopefully it'll be a spring announcement / release, or at least a pre-order. Probably looking at an early summer retail release at this point. And a somewhat limited retail release because of this thing that I did where I messed up and left these components out of it. It creates some complications when entering the expansion into distribution. So mostly for this first print run, we'll mostly be selling it directly to consumers and directly to retailers instead of adding distribution to it. But I look forward to making more copies of it and getting them through distribution as well. Mo says, when will the Oceania Wingspan expansion come out? I haven't announced that yet because I don't really know. We're still working on it. The only reason you even know that it exists right now is because we did a charitable effort to support birds affected by the wildfires in Australia. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even talked about the next location for the expansion yet. Josh answered my question about Imhotep the Duel. He says it has very simple gameplay, which makes it easy for casual gamers. Overall, it's fun and plays fast if you need to kill a little bit of time. Thank you, Josh. Chad says, is it bad form to send prototypes of a game design to more than one publisher at a time? I don't think so, not at all. I think two little, pieces of advice here when you do that is make sure, if you do that, let the publishers know that you've sent it to, say, 3 other publishers. Let them know that you're doing that. And also let them know why you selected that publisher, why you're targeting that publisher. Because if a publisher does hear that you're sending it out to like 3 or 4 other publishers, they might think, oh, well, do you really want us to publish it? Are we the one for you? But if you make it clear to each publisher that there's a specific reason why you are interested in them specifically publishing the game, I think that can help. And it can also help the publisher know, okay, these other people are looking at it. I probably need to look at it in the next month or so. Carlos just has a very nice comment here. And Carlos, I guess, kind of references a video that I did this past weekend about how to design a board game. So I did a video, years ago, I did a video about kind of the 10 steps that I use to design a board game. And after an interview on the Nerd Lab podcast, I decided to revisit that video and do a 2020 version of it. And so my Sunday sit-down video this past week was about the 10 steps that I use to design a board game, and just the design process, not the publishing process, but just the design process. So if you're looking to become a game designer, or if you are a game designer who's looking to see how another designer works, or if you know someone who wants to be a game designer, you might share that video with them. I've learned quite a bit about game design over the years, especially since I've been designing games since I was a little kid. Back then, I thought that designing a game just meant making that first prototype and playing it. And technically, that is designing a game, but there's so much, like that's just the tip of the iceberg of the design process. And so this video goes into a lot of what's under the surface and where a lot of the execution, the work goes into designing the game beyond just having a fun idea and putting together the first prototype. And my Sunday sit-down video for this upcoming Sunday is one that I've already filmed. We're editing it now. And it is my top 10 favorite games ever as of right now. I do this video twice a year. And there were every time I make it, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised this is the game that I want to play more right now than these other games. Or this is the game that I admire more or love more. And so there are some surprises on this list. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you this Sunday. That'll be my top 10 favorite games right now. And if you have a list of your top favorite games, feel free to start thinking about that, and you can post it in the comments of that video when we get there. James says I think James is answering the classic games. Orleans, Shadows over Camelot, and Lords of Waterdeep. Yeah, I don't know if I'd quite put Orleans in the classic category yet. I think it's like a modern classic, but it has been around for a few years. But Shadows over Camelot, definitely. I mean, that's an older game, and Lords of Waterdeep is, I would say, another modern classic. That was among the games that I considered for my top 10 list that I just mentioned. Kai says that he is currently working on a game called Pest/Plague. Do you think that publishers are currently refraining from such topics? That's an interesting question, Kai, especially given the impact coronavirus is having on the world right now, really. I think as long as the game takes it seriously and doesn't make light of other people's pain and suffering, I think it's fine. I think there are lots of games that deal with tough subjects, tough moments in history, tough elements of the present. But if you do it in a way that isn't making light of it, I think you're fine. But let me see, if someone submitted a game to me right now with that topic, yeah, I think the same would go for that. I don't think I would avoid it. Just outright based on the topic. I would have to see your approach to it. Max says, what is the game published more than 10 years ago, which would pass your application for a Stonemaier game today? I did a video a little while ago of like games that we would have published. I mentioned Scotland Yard before, and I think Scotland Yard would qualify for that. Scotland Yard plays up to 6 players. It plays in about 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes even a little bit shorter. It's very easy to learn, but there's a lot of interesting choices to make throughout it. It's maybe a little light for Stonemaier games, but I kind of like that. I like how easy it is to get into a game of Scotland Yard. So yeah, I mean, to the point that when I replayed Scotland Yard as an adult a few years ago as a publisher, replayed my childhood copy, I was like, wow, this game is so good. I can't believe this came out 20, 30 years ago. And I looked to see if it was still actively being published, and it is. Otherwise, I might have tried to get the rights for it. So that level of meeting our qualifications. Steven says, not sure if you mentioned it yet, but I love Andrew Bosley's Scythe print that's going to be part of the new Board Game Geek poster series. Yeah, I just saw that the other day myself, and I mean, Andrew's someone that I've gotten to work with through Tapestry. He's probably best known for Everdell at this point, but his artwork is all over Tapestry. And he was invited by Board Game Geek to make a poster of a game that he loved and admired. And I think he chose Scythe, or maybe Board Game Geek chose Scythe. And so he made a classic-looking, almost like 1950s style poster for Side that you can see on Board Game Geek now. No connection to Stonemaier Games or even Jakob. It's just something that he did for fun, and Board Game Geek is doing for fun. And I thought it's a really cool poster. I thought Andrew did a really fantastic job with it. Vincent said, any plans on making Wingspan into a mobile app? So Stonemaier Games doesn't make any mobile apps or digital apps at all, but we do license our games to developers so that they can handle that. And so right now there's a company called Monster Couch they've had the rights for it for about a year now. So they've been working on this app for about a year, and it should be ready. I think they're targeting this spring, maybe early summer, for the release of it. So it's coming quite soon, I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Yeah. Chris said, did I do anything special for Biddy for his 13th birthday? Maybe a special treat or toy? I just tried to kind of pamper him all day, show him how much I love him. Biddy is my cat, for those of you who don't know. And I give him extra catnip. I gave him one of his toys that I keep his toys in like a little bin, and every once in a while I'll bring out a toy. Otherwise he gets bored of them. What else did I do? I give him extra snuggle time. Just a day. Oh, extra treats, of course, as well. Yeah, just a day of extra care and attention and love. Topher says, I recently played London for the first time, and it absolutely captured my imagination. I can't stop thinking about that game. What was the game that did that to you? Topher, you might also, I don't know if you're curious, but I did a video about London, like the second edition, the current edition, a couple years ago after playing it at Geek Week, because I had a similar a reaction to it. I thought it was fantastic. I had no idea. The last game that really did that to me, I think, was Watergate. Although, yeah, Watergate, I have another answer too. So Watergate definitely has had that impact on me. Flotilla also has. Flotilla is fantastic. There's an element of it that it's a weird game in that I absolutely love like 80 to 85% of it. And there's one like important mechanism in the game, this flipping mechanism, that I don't care about, and I wish that wasn't in the game. As innovative as it is, I wish it wasn't in the game. But the rest of it I love so much. So it's a game that I'm a little bit torn about, but Flotilla is one that, like, there's so many interesting mini games and things to do in the game on the Sky side that I had been thinking about it quite a bit. Let's see here. Actually, I have my topics in a minute, so I'll talk about that. We did some play test on Friday. There was a designer in town that I've been working with, kind of back and forth on a design where they're designing part of a game. I'm designing versions of it. We're trying to figure out what the right fit is. And so we got together as a team with the designer on Friday and played 2 different versions of the game and had a good chat about it. So that was, I know that's very vague. I'm not going to tell you what the game is because it's still very much in flux, but we had a good meeting there, good play test. I also did a blog post. My blog post last Thursday apparently was spread around quite a bit among industry folk. It was about replacement parts. Last week was the week that Asmodee announced that they are implementing a very different replacement parts system than they have in the past, where if you have a game that is missing a part or has a broken part, then you actually need to return the entire game to where you bought it and then get a replacement from that source. And Asmodee will cover them and compensate them. A very different system than what Stonemaier Games does. With Stonemaier Games, if you have a missing or broken part when you open the box, or even a couple years down the road, if you spill wine on your game or your cat eats a piece or you lose a piece or a card, you can fill out our replacement parts form and we will send it to you for free. Very different system there, but I kind of looked at the pros and cons of that and why Asmodee may have implemented that, how it might impact people. And there was a lot of chatter about that post. So if you're curious about replacement parts and how different companies approach it, feel free to check out last Friday's blog post. My Monday blog post this week was kind of a revisiting of some early Kickstarter lessons that I wrote a while ago, and updating them a little bit, kind of summarizing them so people can get the main takeaways from each of them. Mo says, where can I find the metal coins for viticulture in Mexico? I really want it. Well, Mo, you have a couple options. One, you can buy them from our web store or any store in the US that carries them and ship them down to Mexico. If you have a store in Mexico that you like to support, they can order the coins. They are something that we put into distribution, so they can order the coins from their distributor and get them to the store. And if you're looking for a store, maybe you have a few different options for stores. We do have a retailer locator on our website, so you can look for stores in Mexico and maybe check with them to see if any of them have the coins. Adam says, speaking of that game design video that I did this past week, you mentioned about playtesting your games in waves. Are you retesting to the same groups or new or both? Yeah, that's a great question. I should have addressed that in the video. I always use new people for different waves. I just want to get a variety of perspectives when I do blind playtesting. So for like the Tapestry expansion that we've been blind playtesting, I did 6 waves of blind playtesting, and each wave was to between like 5 and 10 lead playtesters around the world, and they would bring the game to their playtest group and playtest it with them. And then I would find a new group for wave 2, a new group for wave 3, and so on. Isaac says, have I played the Chronicles of Crime games? What do I think of heavy app-driven games? I have played. I played, I think, 2 scenarios of Chronicles of Crime, and I was incredibly impressed by the implementation of the app and how it uses time as kind of a seamless mechanism in the game, a seamless resource. And the way I love the thing where you kind of look into a room and only you can see it, but you're describing it to all the other players. I love that element of it. I'm amazed by the programming and development that went into it. It was too daunting for me to do as a publisher. I wouldn't do that unless I had a developer, an internal developer working solely on the game, and that they could actually meet most of their deadlines. Otherwise, I'd have to outsource it, and then I've never had any digital product deliver anywhere close to on time. So that isn't something that I would consider for our games, largely for that reason. But I love other companies that are willing to take those risks and make that happen, like Lucky Duck Games. Sonia says she finally played Scythe. I'm glad you finally played it, Sonia. She says, I love all the ways to be able to put stars on the board and accomplish those goals. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you finally got to play it. What faction did you play? Games I played recently, I played Underwater Cities for the first time the other day. That's a little heavier than the typical type of game that I would play, but it's right on that edge. It really was a nice sweet spot for especially with the decision space of pairing a certain color card with the worker placement spot that you're choosing on the board. Really, really cool game. I'll be talking about it in a video soon. I also played Isle of Cats for a second time. I played Ra, one of my favorite auction games. Played Dice Forge and played Quacks of Quedlinburg. So all those games are games that I really enjoyed. Underwater Cities is new, but all the others are games that I continually love. And I think I played Orleans last week too. Yeah, I did play Orleans. Tonight I'll be playing a game night. I'll be playing Escape Plan, and I'll be playing Glenmore tomorrow, and I want to play Lockup. So I'm curious if any of you have played either Escape Plan or Lockup, if you would recommend one over the other. Connor says he has a hypothetical question. He says, the internet goes down all across the world. In which area are you most affected, and how do you get around it? Like in which area of my life? I mean, my work. My work is so heavily dependent on the internet. I think that would have a huge impact. I would have more time for like the brainstorming stage of game design, but every other stage of or element of my job would suffer as a result. Howard says he has an impromptu board game conversation with the employees at Powell's Books yesterday. For some reason, their purchaser doesn't buy Stonemaier games. What was their reason? I'm curious about that. Chad says, have I ever considered a Hudson Mohawk? I think you could pull it off. Is that a hairstyle maybe? Vincent says, I blame you for my addiction to A Feast for Odin. Such a great game. I'm glad. I think as addictions go, that's a good one to have. That's a fantastic game. That one actually was on my top 10 list and dropped off of it a little bit. But every time I play, I'm like, oh, I absolutely love this game. It's the kind of game that if I played it like very recently, it probably would be on my top 10 or at least my top 20 list. Let's see. Do I have any other topics today? No, I think I've covered all of my key topics. So we'll just do questions for the rest of today. Looks like Joe, my coworker, just joined us. Joe's been working today on, as far as I know, Joe works from home, working on the Sunday Sit Down video, the editing for that, and some proofreading for a product that we have in the works right now. Marcel says, would Stonemaier Games be interested in a trivia game such as Trivial Pursuit, or something that combines modern gameplay with general knowledge questions? I appreciate you asking, but I don't think so. No, trivia just isn't something that I'm excited about. I do enjoy Wits and Wagers, and I'm curious about the new like Ken Jennings trivia game, but it isn't something that I would consider as a publisher. Connor says, would I have published Summit if it was originally submitted to Stonemaier Games, or does the competitive take that option to track too much for Stonemaier Games? If Summit was submitted to us purely as a cooperative game, I think we definitely would have considered it. Yeah. Yeah, I think so, Connor. I mean, it plays up to 6 players. I'm guessing it plays solo. I've never tried. It is an event game. It has memorable moments. The setup's like, setup it takes a little bit, but I think the setup is actually more complicated because you have the competitive and the cooperative setup in the same place. Other than that, it really isn't that complicated. Yeah, it checks all of our boxes. It's a fantastic game. Yeah, I would say Summit cooperative by itself would be a game that I would have had to seriously consider as a publisher. Yeah. Nathan says, am I still climbing? If so, is it helping with game design? Yeah, I think Nathan is somewhat referring to a blog post I wrote when I started doing indoor rock climbing almost probably 6 or 7 months ago, maybe even longer now, sometime in the past year. And I wrote how it's helping me be a better game designer, better publisher, looking for different routes, different approaches, knowing my limitations, learning from other people. And Nathan, yeah, I would say all those things still apply. And yes, I am still climbing. I go pretty much every week, maybe every week or so. I try to basically go every Sunday and spend a few hours there. And yeah, it's been an incredible experience. I love going to the climbing gym and just trying different routes, seeing how I can push myself, or just having fun. Sometimes I don't even push myself. I just do something that I enjoy, a route that I just have fun with, and that's fun too. I love doing that. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm glad that Megan introduced me to that hobby. Seth has a post here that looks like I need to look at it, Seth, in more detail. Seth, I'll take a look at it after this video, but thank you for linking to it. Sean says he's playing Fenris this weekend, hopefully all the way through. How long do I think 5 players will take? So if you're playing the Rise of Fenris, it's a, what, 8-game campaign? 8-game? It's going to take you the better part of a day. I think like if you sit down in the morning, maybe have breakfast with your friends or meet up after breakfast, play a game or two before lunch, have lunch. Like it'll take you to bedtime, I think, to do it if you want to sit down and get it all done in one day. So have some meals planned in there and snacks. Connor asked, who is this mysterious designer? And I'm not going to give that away, Connor. Andrew says, any update on the possibility of a deck building game in the Scythe universe? It would be an insta-buy for me and my wife. Well, that's encouraging. Yeah, I'm brainstorming a deck building game, and it might be in the Scythe universe. We'll see. It's a format of game that I've been interested in quite some time. So right now, just I'm working a lot on one game that is not that game, and so that is kind of my side project right now. I focus a lot on this one game, and then maybe a few hours a week, or even maybe an hour or so a day, I go over and brainstorm some ideas for that. But I would say I'm close to getting. I have gotten one prototype to the table. It was okay. So I'll hopefully get another prototype to the table soon and see where it takes me. Let's see. John says there was a lawsuit against Mythic Games by their designer, Pascal Bernard, over unpaid fees. Do I have any comment on it? I think someone mentioned that last week, or maybe I saw an article about it on Board Game Geek, and I don't know the situation. I hope that yeah, I honestly don't know. I don't think I can comment on something like that I know nothing about. Yeah. Most says, are there going to be more expansions for Scythe? And no, there won't be. No, not for Scythe itself. Mihir is here. Mihir says, curious to know which Shopify theme do I use for the website? Any pros and cons? I may have to look that up while I talk for a minute here, Mihir. Our theme is Classic, and I like it. I'm sure there's better themes, but Classic seems like a good fit for us. So we use Classic. There are some under the hood changes that our web developers made, but yeah, we use the Classic theme. Tony says that Scythe made an appearance in an episode of After School Dice Club, an anime on Hulu. He saw it on a shelf in the game shop that they were in. Yeah, someone sent me, maybe it was you, Tony, sent me a screenshot of that. That was pretty cool to see. Emmett says he loves Escape Plan. It's one of my favorite Vital Lacerda games. That's good. Yeah, I mentioned, for those of you who are coming in here now, I mentioned that tonight at my game night, I will either be playing Escape Plan or Lockup. Most likely Escape Plan. I've been telling a friend that I'll be playing that for a while that I want to play it. I love heist games, so I'm hoping it captures that feel of a heist, or at least the what happens right after a heist is finished. Carol says she's interested in Lockup. Here says Escape Plan any day. He says it's a great game about managing your in-game money while making much of end-game money. Mike says, do you factor setup teardown in my game designs? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's when I ask playtesters for like how long it takes to play a game, I include setup and teardown in that calculation because I consider the whole thing. I really want setup to be as streamlined and seamless as possible. Ideally, it would get to the point where you don't have to refer to the rulebook for setup, where the user interface is that clear in telling you what you need for that starting for the starting game. Not a lot of like a lot of games have like a lot of little things that you have to put out for more variability and replayability. I get that, but I think there's a limit to it that impacts setup. And so I like to, yeah, it's definitely very much on my mind. And for cleanup, I think sometimes a little bit more about the insert, the tray, like how things are going to be organized. So it's very easy to put those things back into the box. And then it comes back to setup too. Are you able to easily take those things out of the box? So that's a little bit more about product design than the actual game design experience. Andrew says, I heard you mention once that if you had to pick a favorite Lacerda game, it would be Kanban. What were your thoughts on the Kickstarter for the new version, Kanban EV? I think it looks beautiful. I haven't really looked all that much into it. I've only played Kanban, I think, twice, and I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't put it anywhere in my list of like favorite games. It was just my favorite Lacerda. But maybe Escape Plan will jump up on my list. I need to find a Lacerda game that I really love because he's such an amazing designer. Yeah, I need to. I'm going to try the On Mars game sometime this year, sometime soon, hopefully, and we'll see how Escape Plan goes. Gerald says, when I play the games that you've designed with fans, do they try to win, or do I try to win or take it easy? If you lose, are they disappointed that you don't appear to be a grandmaster at your own game? It depends on the situation. Usually when that happens, it means that I'm teaching the game to at least one player at the table. And so my focus, most of my energy is on teaching them how to play rather than delving into a deep strategy myself. And often I'm using my own turn as examples. I'm saying, okay, I'll take this action over here to show you how it works. So typically that does not lead to a winning strategy. But there are rare occasions where I get to play my games with fans and everyone knows how to play and they just want to compete. And that is a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. And I think people take pleasure in winning those games in particular against the designer. And I love that. I love that they had that fun of beating me at my own game. But I go all out in those games and I try to do my best to win them myself. So I just have a lot of fun with that. George said he celebrated his birthday last weekend. Happy birthday, George, by playing Tapestry when the clock hit, I guess, midnight, essentially. He says it was a surprise planned by his close friends. Oh, that's awesome. Your friends picked a game that you love, I think, and helped you play it right when the clock struck midnight on your birthday. That's really cool. That's also a very late game. Are you normally up that late? My friends would have to wake me up if that was the case on my birthday. Jacques says he just backed a game, the Anchorman game, and it still has a ways to go to reach its funding goal. What are some things I can do as a backer to help it reach its goal? Well, one thing you can do is what you just did. You mentioned it in a video here, a forum. I think one thing you can do is maybe go to one of the board game groups on Facebook and share your excitement for the game. And be specific. Don't just say, I'm excited about this game. Say, I'm excited about this game, and this is why. And maybe share a photo from the project page that represents your excitement for it. I think that personal testimonial can go a long way, especially if you're specific about it. So you might give that a try. I'm actually also a backer of that game because I enjoy Anchorman. It looks like kind of a silly, fun game. So I think I'm a backer. I looked at the project page at least. Yeah, I think I am a backer, actually. Narciso says, I hope you are well. Do you have in mind to create an exclusive board game for 2 players for this year? I don't know. My company publishes games that range from that go up to at least 5 players. So between 2 and 5 or 2 and 6, and ideally 1 and 6. So at this point in my career, I and especially due to our restrictions as Stonemaier Games, publishing games that you can play as a couple or as a bigger group, I have no plans in designing a 2-player only game. Roger says, in the Brazilian version of Wingspan, the bird names are in English. Some people here love it because it feels more like the original game. Some people hate it because they don't know the English and the names are unpronounceable to them. My question is, how do I go about making those decisions? Is this something the localization partner decides, or is it my call? It is something that the localization partner decides. And the factor here, like basically localization partners had a choice for Wingspan. Do they keep the original names or do they translate them? With the risk being with the translation being that some of the bonus cards that refer to the names of the birds are the percentage of them are thrown off, and they have to recalibrate those bonus cards for the new names. So some partners like Ludophi chose to keep the original English names so they didn't have to mess around with those bonus cards or the percentages on those bonus cards. Connor says, what is the question you get most repeatedly, and what question do I dislike answering? What question do I get the most repeatedly? I don't know, I get a lot of different questions. In these live stream chats, people often ask a lot, like, what are the dates for this thing? When will this happen? And it isn't a question that I dislike. I don't mind it, but usually the answer is, when I'm ready to tell you, I'll tell you. And until then, I'm not going to tell you. As for any question that I really dislike answering, really, actually, it's any question that is just kind of a loaded question, loaded with misinformation. Because then I can't just answer the question. I have to first correct the false information in the question, and then is there even a question left to answer at that point? Sometimes not. Those are the ones that are most annoying to me to answer. Yeah. Heather says that she got Clank Legacy and Machikoro Legacy for her birthday. I'm sorry, Heather. Have you played both? Which would you start first? I play tested Machikoro Legacy. I play tested, I think, the first game or 2 at most. And I don't remember much about it. That said, all due respect to Machikoro Legacy, I hope it's awesome. I need to play it. Clank Legacy is one of perhaps the best Legacy game that I've ever played, and one of the best games that I've ever played. It is absolutely fantastic, and I would highly recommend jumping into that. I think they're both very different lengths, though. So if you're looking for a 30 to 45-minute game, maybe one that you can play through in its entirety within a few days, go with Machikoro Legacy. Do it, get out of the way, have fun with it. Clank Legacy is a bit more of a commitment. We play with 4 players. Each session lasted between 2.5 to 3 hours. There are at least 10 games that you're going to play in it. So we played it over many months, meeting once a week to play it with some friends. So kind of keep that in mind. I guess that might factor into your decision. Sonia says, I just got Concordia. What are the pros and cons? Concordia is a brilliant game. The action selection mechanism in Concordia is absolutely amazing. I love that system. I don't know if there are many cons to Concordia other than maybe the art, but it's really just the art for the box. The art for the board is perfectly fine. There really are many cons to it. I would highly recommend giving it a try. And once you try it, if you really like that card system, also try Flotilla. Flotilla is kind of a more modern implementation of Concordia, of that Concordia system. Rafal says that he plays Scythe on Steam and he's waiting for the iOS version. Do I have any idea when it's coming out? I don't have any idea. I have heard rumors that they are working on it, but that could mean it could come out in a month. That could also mean that it could come out in many, many months. So I don't know. Andrew says that he heard me mention that there was a chance for more expansions for viticulture. Any update on how likely that is to happen? I think it's fairly likely. Yeah, I don't know what it will be yet. I basically have brainstormed some ideas with a few designers that submitted their ideas to me. And a few of those designers are working on expansions. It isn't something that I am prioritizing right now as a designer myself, because I have a much bigger project that I need to focus on. But there are versions of viticulture expansions in the works with other designers. And at some point they will show them to me, and I will get more involved as a developer, maybe as a designer, but probably just as a developer for those expansions. I want to make sure that they add something very new to the game. While I love that viticulture has like more stuff expansions, like more visitors, visit from the Rhine Valley, and Tuscany, which makes it kind of a bigger, more expansive game. I want these to add a twist on the game while still retaining the core elements. So that's what we're targeting, and we will see. Definitely nothing released in 2020, but hopefully it's something in 2021. Josh says, since the whole replacement parts thing this last few weeks, Josh is referring to the Asmodee announcement and my blog post, I think, about it. He wanted to ask, what do I think of 3D printing and its use in games? You know, I have a friend who 3D prints pieces for games. I just played Underwater Cities this past week, and he had printed some really nice worker placement submarine tokens that I think are vastly better than the cardboard tokens in the game. I love using 3D printing for that purpose then. So taking a game and enhancing it with 3D printing. As for replacement parts, I don't know if it works as well. There are only certain components that are made from plastic in the first place, and it's tough to just exactly emulate a token in a game. Even in Blockus, I have an old copy of Blockus, and a friend, I lost a piece, and a friend printed that piece for me, which is awesome. I really appreciate him doing that. And we play with it. It's perfect, but it is not the exact same as the original piece. So I think it's tough to get that exactly the same. So I don't know if I could see it being used for replacement parts, but for being used for enhancing games, I can definitely see that happening more and more in the future. Jason has a nice comment that I'll read out loud here just because it's so nice. Jason says, I just wanted to say I love your passion for board games and taking the time to share my thoughts and insights. I really appreciate how frequently you post videos. Not everyone is so willing to share themselves with us so freely. Well, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate that. And I have fun with the videos. I love these Facebook Live chats. I love talking about game mechanisms in my videos on Tuesday and Friday. And I've really enjoyed my Sunday sit-down videos. That's something that is fairly new. I've been doing that, I think, for less than 2 years now. And I love the ability to sit down and discuss a topic in detail. And I learned so much from people who comment on those videos. Like the video I did recently about living card games, I've learned so much from reading the comments and reading people's opinions about them. That definitely has a positive impact on me as a designer and a publisher. So it goes. I'm grateful that you say that, and thank you so much. And I'm grateful that people actually watch them and comment on them, because they really does have a positive impact on me. Andrew says, out of all the games you have made, which one is my favorite? Actually, this is a question Connor asked, questions that I dislike. I don't dislike this question, but it is a difficult one for me to answer, because it's like asking, which kid is your favorite out of all your kids? For me, that would be nieces and nephews. I can't pick my favorite niece or nephew. I can't pick my favorite game that I published. I could definitely pick, I would say my answer for this that I generally say is, Andrew, if you were to play a game with me, if you were coming to game night tonight and you wanted to play a game that I published or that I designed, at that time, my favorite game to play will be the game that you want to play. I'm excited to play the games that I designed with people who are excited to play them. So my favorite game that I've published at any given moment is the game that the other people around me are excited to play. Al says, are there more generic themes such as Mediterranean trading, space, farming, or something that you try to avoid when producing or designing a new game? Not necessarily, not based on that element of the theme itself, but it would definitely need a twist, something to make it stand out. If someone came to me and said, Jamie, I've got a game about trading in the Mediterranean, but there is a time travel element to it, then I might be, have a nice little hook there. Or they could even say, I have a trading in the Mediterranean game, and it's a real-time game where you are advancing on different tracks, and there's a bunch of cards on those tracks, and you're drawing cards from each of those tracks at different times, depending on your position of them. And I would say, oh, that already exists. That's Trade on the Tigris, and it's awesome. So I like that designers are still looking at some of these classic themes and putting a new twist on them. I think that's fantastic. Tom is talking about Cryptid here. He says he's blown away by the replayability, the ease of teaching, and quick setup. There's even an app to help us set up, and it will run hints for you. He says, I'm a big fan of helper apps that keep track of fiddly information, and I don't like apps that are required, like board games. The board game is unplayable without the app. How do I feel about apps and board games? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit earlier with Chronicles of Crime. Someone asked about that. As a gamer, I generally like to turn off screens when I play games. And so if if a game requires an app, I'm a little hesitant about it. But I have had some very positive experiences. I mentioned Chronicles of Crime. I've had a very positive experience looking around the room in 3D on the app with Chronicles. I've also had great experiences with Mansions of Madness. I love how that kind of manages the gameplay, makes it a lot easier as you play the game to introduce new rooms and new elements to the game. So I have had very positive experiences with it. I actually haven't had many negative experiences with it. So, but I do also, and there's actually a really cool app for Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This is an example of one where you don't need it, but if you have it, it's really, really cool. I think it's called the Mad King Steward. And it's not something that we officially make. It's something that someone else made. And basically, at the end of the game, you take a photo, or you hover the app over your final castle, one of your castles, and in real time, it identifies all the different tiles and scores all of them for you. So you just go around the table and kind of essentially take a photo of each of the castles around the table, and it scores them for you in real time. It's amazing. Connor says, Wingspan has metric and imperial units in it. Was this to appeal to all regions or a different reason? Yeah, we actually had the debate. Originally, it was in inches. I mean, Wingspan used inches, inches. And we decided to convert all those numbers to centimeters because centimeters just make more sense. And because more global appeal, I think, and because really the unit of measurement doesn't even matter all that much. I don't think we've had any Americans complain about it, but if we did, it doesn't really matter because you're comparing always like which number is bigger. You don't actually need to know how big 173 centimeters is. It's just a comparison point. George talked a little bit more about his special birthday with Stonemaier Games. Nick says he's been playing Tapestry a lot and enjoying it. I'm glad to hear that, Nick. I'm glad you and your wife are enjoying it. Steven says, I just did a video about the 10 steps to design a game. I asked a question about whether you needed equal passion for all steps. Yeah, that was a great question. I enjoyed answering that one in the comments, Steven. Steven says, do I have a favorite and least favorite step in terms of passion and motivation? My favorite step, I think, is the brainstorming stage, because that's when anything is possible, anything goes. Sometimes I get a little bit too caught up in that stage. My least favorite step, I don't know if I have a least favorite step. Brainstorming is definitely the number one that I really enjoy the most, but the rest are steps that I enjoy. I mean, they take sometimes more discipline to get through, like actually making the prototype. That can take some time. Actually playing the game with people can take some time and energy, different types of energy. I would say maybe the toughest part are the first few play tests, because I go into them and I'm so excited, even though I know the game is going to be terrible at that point. I'm still excited to play it and get to the table. And then it is terrible. It always is with the first few play tests. And it's draining. It's really draining at that point. I often have to just like go clear my head after those play tests so that I can make the necessary changes, or even I sometimes just put it aside for a while. Sometimes it's just daunting at that point. You're like, okay, I spent all this time making this and designing this, and it doesn't work. It doesn't play it at all like I thought it would, and that can be exhausting. So that is maybe the step that I dread the most, but I also get really excited about it. I'm excited to get the game to the table for the first time, or the second time, or the third time. Nick says, I'm curious about the tuning changes made for the civilizations. Can I talk about your process on why the changes were made? Did it come from analytics? Would you do anything different in the second edition? So second edition, we won't. There's no second edition necessary for Tapestry. Like second editions are for if you're going to do a big revamp of the art and graphic design or a big revamp in the mechanisms. And we just had some little tweaks that we needed to make to a few of the civilizations, and we're only at the start of the game. And it did come from analytics. Yeah, we collect data on our website from anyone who reports plays of Tapestry. We collect that on our website, and we look at it every now and then to see if there are any civilizations that are just way better or performing way worse than other ones. I think we've come to a nice sweet spot now in the revisions that we've made, and the way that I analyzed the data for the expansion was very different than the way that I analyzed it for the core game. So I'm hoping this time that with the expansion that we've caught anything up front that might have such variances in between some maybe overpowered civilizations and some underpowered ones. So having those analytics come in early, I think will have a very positive impact on any asymmetric game that we have going forward. Runner says, do I have a nice view from that chair in the background? That chair is actually covered in cat fur. That is my cat chair. That's my old desk chair, but now just the cats use it. So the cats have a nice view, but I don't sit in that chair anymore. Heather says she also wanted to share that we've played 2 full campaigns of Charterstone, one with just my husband, Heather's husband, and another with a newly married friends. She said they loved it so much that midway through our campaign, they went out and bought the game to start playing with their family. I love that we can just keep that campaign going. That comment made my day, especially since the Charterstone reprint will be available next week. So in my e-newsletter next week, or our e-newsletter, I'll be announcing the reprint of Charterstone. Again, it's not a new edition or anything like that. It's just a reprint of the game. This time we did include the FAQ printed in the game itself, so people don't have to look online for that FAQ. But other than that, the game is the same as the one that you played. And I'm excited for people to finally get their hands on it because it's been out of print for a little while. Chad says, you and only a few other publishers, including James Hudson, who was watching earlier, take the time to regularly communicate via live videos with their customers. What advantages does your transparency give Stonemaier Games? So the transparency, so you're asking about the transparency specifically. My hope is that people can see from the live videos I make, or really any content that I make, that I'm available to answer questions, and that hopefully they know that when I talk to you, that I'm telling the truth. It kind of sucks when people accuse you of not telling the truth or for hiding things. And I have many flaws. I am far from a perfect person. I run an imperfect business, but I do actually tell the truth about things. And it sucks when people don't think that I'm telling the truth. So hopefully the transparency that I offer in these videos can establish and maintain the trust that when you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth. And the things that I'm saying are the truth based on the facts that I have right now. So I think there is a pretty big advantage there over time. That said, the types of people that sometimes occasionally accuse me of not telling the truth are, as far as I know, not the people that are watching these videos. So I don't know if I'm really helping that aspect of things. Connor says, for my Sunday sit-downs, have I ever considered having guests to chat with? That's a good question, Connor. I have not considered that. I don't know if I would, honestly, because I love the flexibility of filming on my own schedule. And it adds a whole nother element to kind of match that with someone else's schedule. There's just an extra layer of stress added to that. So probably not for the Sunday sit-down videos, but I am happy, like if someone else has their own channel, their own podcast, I do like talking about games and topics with other people too. So that's why I'm always happy when someone invites me on their podcast. Andrew says, if he's ever in St. Louis, can we play Scythe? Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Especially if it matches with my game night, which is on Wednesday. Sean says, do I feel as though sometimes you take unfair amounts of criticism based on my status in the board game industry? Sean, yeah, that's a tough question. Part of it is the part about the status. I don't know if I I don't even sometimes know what my status is in the board game industry. I think there are lots of people that do great things in the industry, and lots of people who are, visible and vocal in the game industry. And I am one of them, but there are many designers and publishers that are way better at what they do than what I do. But in terms of, I guess, my visibility, which is pretty big, and do I feel that I sometimes take unfair amounts of criticism? Unfair is a tough word too. I don't know. I mean, if someone has criticism that they want to share, I don't know, Sean. I don't know how to answer that question, honestly. I don't know. I don't know if it's because of my visibility or if it's because of the choices that I've made. But I think what I'm almost stumbling around trying to say is that I don't want to say that it's deserved, but I make choices and people sometimes criticize me for those choices, and they have every right to do so. Hopefully they do so constructively. Ideally they do it lovingly in a way that can make things better, rather than just screaming for the sake of screaming. But I put myself in this position. I've made myself visible, and I've exposed myself and my company to criticism. So I need to be ready to take it if people want to hand it out. So I would not say it's unfair, is what I'm getting at. Jason says, have I had any close calls with any of my games not getting to a playable state? Oh yeah, Jason, like most of my games don't ever get to a playable state. You never hear about them because they never get that far. Runer says, is it possible to mix the French Wingspan with the English European expansion? It is, but I don't know why you would, because there is a French version of the European expansion too. But you could if you wanted to. We make them all. Like I handle the production for all those components, so they all use the same card stock and all that stuff. It's just a different language. Andrew says, I always felt like there was a connection between chess and Scythe in terms of limited specific movement and the Cold War elements. What were my inspirations for the limited movement and combat style in Scythe? Combat style was more about, it was more inspired by Jakob's world, Jakob's art, and seeing that combat isn't a huge part of that world, but it's an ever-looming presence, an ever-looming possibility. So I wanted to capture kind of the threat of combat more than the combat itself. And for the combat style, the mechanisms, I wanted them to be, I wanted players to have a lot of agency and a lot of information. I didn't want it to be a random dice toss. I tested random dice tosses and they weren't working out. They took agency away from the players. I didn't like that. For the limited movement, that was more about giving players space and time, especially with Riverwalk, to build their own thing, kind of have a safe place on the board for at least the first third of the game. And so movement for that reason was very limited in terms of like that you can't move 2 turns in a row. When you do move, it starts off pretty slow and plodding, and then you expand out in the world so that you can't just like walk over into someone's home base on turn 3 and ruin all their plans. Chad says, since I love writing as well as game design, have I ever considered making it a supplemental novel that incorporates your board game's world? I have thought about, like when I did Euphoria, I wrote a little short story for it. Some people wrote some fan fiction for it, but writing a novel takes a long time, and I don't think my time is best spent in that way at this time. Maybe someday when my focus isn't on running a board game company and designing games, but those elements are so much more a high priority right now that I wouldn't consider spending a few months writing a novel. As much as I love to write too. Thank you, Sona, for your nice comment here. Al says, do you and Alan's my co-founder, my business partner, do we look at different aspects of a game or its mechanisms and themes beyond just, does this game work and is it fun when Alan presents me with a submitted game? Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the whole experience. Is this unique? Is it innovative? Is it fun? Is it functional? Is it intuitive? Does it fit our guidelines? Does it fit like what a Stonemaier game feels like? All those things. Yeah, we look at all those things when when I play a game that Alan accepts into that stage of the submission process. I'm almost out of time here, so let me see if there's a few more questions. Richard says, part of the appeal to me for our games is that he could play on my own, like as a solo gamer, but also with his children. So he can play with his children or on his own. Although he says 3 of his kids are in New Zealand. He says, so my question is, what other games are both a great single-player game and a family game? Most of our games fit that ticket, as you know, Richard. Most of our games play solo and play for larger groups. Honestly, though, for other publishers, I don't often pay attention to the solo modes, if there is a solo mode or not, so I don't know. I know that's a priority for us, but I don't play solo games, or I don't play games solo, so I don't actually know. But other people might have some answers in the comments here. Kevin says, what mechanisms am I looking forward to exploring further in future designs? Well, one thing that was mentioned earlier in this video, another question, is that I am intrigued by deck building and bag building, but I want to do something special and unique with it, something that hasn't been done. So that's something I'm intrigued by. And George, I'll let George's question be the last one. If there are any other questions after this, feel free to post them on the YouTube version of this video. That's where I'll get alerts for it. George says, have I planned my next trip? Am I considering visiting Europe more? Yeah, I'd love to visit Europe again, but my next trip will be to Alaska in about a month. So yeah, Alaska will be my next trip. Our next trip. Megan and I are going there together. All right, thank you all for joining me today. I love these questions. I love some of the nice things you say that I didn't read out loud because I'm a little bashful about that, but I appreciate your comments, and I will see you next Wednesday for our e-newsletter live cast. Take care. Bye.